projecting him out 4 to 6 weeks, and he could potentially, end up on the pub at the beginning of the season. Who knows? So he could miss as many as 4 games. Maybe he doesn't miss any. Who knows? It's early to tell. You got to keep your eye on this. I think Boyd is one of those guys that could be a riser on the rankings based on what keeps coming out on Hopkins as we get further along in training camp. So he's definitely someone that should be drafted in regards to having him on the bench, given that Hopkins is dealing with a knee injury, because those knee injuries, first they start off 4 to 6 weeks, then you find them on the pub, and then before you know it, it can be longer. Hopkins isn't a spring chicken anymore, you know what I mean, and stuff. So, he's Hopkins is 32 years old, so granted, Hopkins surprised people last year with how productive he was in the Titans. Now that King Henry is gone, I think the Titans' offense is going to go through a transformation. So I don't think it's going to be as conservative as it's been in the years past. So definitely, Boyd is a late round draft pick. Is he someone that you're going to pop in right away? Probably not. But he's someone that you got to keep your eye open on, because he can jump up in the rankings, given what's going on with Hopkins. Treylon Burks, I keep seeing the coaching staff there says, I don't think they're high on him for some reason. So I don't see anybody on their depth chart that's going to really challenge Boyd for that wide receiver 3 spot.
And I might even have a little bit of a hot take here. Even if Hopkins is fully healthy, you might even see Tyler Boyd being that wide receiver too still, because looking at his numbers, he's always kind of been like consistent, but he's also been kind of like a touchdown guy as well outside of like 2 or 3 years there. So I don't know. He could potentially hop, but you never know. They like you said, they have an old receiving core. I think Tyler Boyd of their top 3 receivers might be the youngest. Him and Ridley are the same age at 29.
Yeah.
So you have 29, 29, and 32. So at any point, any one of those 3 guys could get hurt and basically be done.
Yeah. So just someone you got to keep your eye open and see. So
moving on. Luke McCaffrey of the Commanders, right?
Yeah. Boy, I tell you what. Luke is he's another wide receiver from this rookie class that really intrigues me. Everybody knows his brother, and Christian McCaffrey, CMC. Uh, his dad was a great receiver, consistent receiver for Denver for years and years. Uh, and right now, Luke is listed as the wide receiver 3, which doesn't surprise me on the depth chart with the Chargers. To me, he's another sleeper, another deep sleeper. I would say, I would keep your eyes open on this guy. I don't know how the coaching staff feels about Jahan Dotson. McCaffrey could leap him. He comes from a bloodline family of football. It would not surprise me if he's an uh, active in this offense. I had him ranked a little bit higher at 65 because I got a good feeling about him, and I could see him, later in the year showing out, in this Washington offense. The reason I ranked him where I did though is because you got a rookie quarterback in Daniels, you got a new coaching staff there, so I think that they're definitely going to spread the ball around. He is behind McLaurin and Dotson, so he's going to have to show out to move above them. But I definitely think that he's a young talent. You got to keep your eye on. Just like I talked about Mitchell and with the Colts. He's another one of these rookies in this class that I think is going to surprise people.
Yeah, for me, McCaffrey kind of gets lost in the sauce. Just looking at like the depth chart, you have McLaurin, you have Dotson, and then you have Sinnett and Ertz as your tight ends. But on top of that, you also have Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, both receiving running backs. So like the reason I ranked him as low as I did is because I just kind of see him getting lost there with how many guys on that team receive the ball quite a bit. And to me, he's probably sitting there like even behind running backs a little bit, probably at like the 5 or 6 guy there as an option. But that's just me personally.
We'll see.
Moving on, Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, so Bateman, I think we were pretty close on him. Um, Bateman's another guy that has potential to move up in the rankings. Bateman's biggest issue, last year he finally had a season where he was out there, 16 games. He probably missed out on the last game because of playoffs and stuff. The 2 years before, though, he was hurt. I know quite a bit about him because he was, a Golden Gopher for Minnesota. So I followed him with the Gophers. This guy has definitely got a lot of talent. If he stays healthy, I think that he's definitely going to be their wide receiver 2 behind Zay Flowers. My problem with Bateman and the reason I have him ranked here is that until I see more consistency of Lamar going to his receivers than actually going to Mark Andrews. I always am a little bit hesitant, on drafting a Ravens receiver because you just don't know how many targets they're actually going to get. But I definitely think Bateman has a lot of talent, and he's got potential to, climb up the list. Depending on, you know, you know, if Lamar targets him more this year.
Yeah, their receiving core is always harder to judge, just especially since drafting Lamar. Like it'd be different if Flacco was still like out there playing quarterback, because Flacco actually utilized his receivers quite a bit more. But Lamar can run the ball. You got Derrick Henry, so you're probably going to run the ball a little bit more this year. Zay Flowers is going to be your clear cut one receiver, and then you have one of the best tight ends in the league on the team, so he's going to get a lot of targets. I think.
Not to mention that they've got a really good backup tight end.
Yeah, and likely.
Likely is he likely would be a starter on any other team.
And then you still have Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell as well as your receiving running back. So it's gonna be hard to place Bateman any higher just because there's just a lack of production there for him.
Yeah,
he'd be better off on a different team.
He's definitely draftable though, to have on the bench just to see, because I do think that he has the potential to move up the rankings based on how he fits into the offense.
True, and if Zay Flower gets hurt, he's the number one receiver on the team, so it wouldn't hurt to draft him just to have him sit there. And he's a bench player at best, so none of these players are going to hurt to draft if you have a gut feeling about them. KJ Osborn.
Listen, you guys know I'm a huge Vikings fan from Minnesota. Love the Vikings. I was really disappointed the Vikings didn't keep KJ Osborn. I think that he is probably one of the most underrated receivers in the league. Granted, last year he didn't have as good a year as he did the year before, which was a little bit surprising given the fact that Jefferson was out, 4 or 5 games, I believe. So I think that might have hurt him a little bit. Everything that I'm seeing and coming out of the Patriots camp is that he's having a tremendous training camp. I'm a little surprised they got him on the depth chart here as low as they do. I do think that he's gonna, ultimately end up being their, he's definitely going to be on their roster, and I definitely think he's going to be one of their top 3 targets. I just can't see that he wouldn't be. But this all depends on Drake May, right, Wiggs?
Or whatever quarterback they start. I don't know. Drake May's been having a bad camp.
And I don't know what this coaching staff is going to do in regards to their offense. New England's kind of a mess. So to me, KJ, as much as I love him, he's a bench player at best right now until we see where all these players shake out because they got Jalen Rager, you know,
Demario Douglas.
they got Demario Douglas, they got Polk, you know, they've got Gibson and Stevenson, and a rookie quarterback, along with Hunter Henry as their tight end. So I think it's really going to depend on what we see at the beginning of the season. So to me, KJ Osborn, you just got to keep an eye on to see, you know, how he's using the offense. But you know, definitely late round draft pick. If he, you know, depending on how many receivers you want on your team.
Are they missing a receiver on here? Wasn't there a guy that got hurt last year that's not showing up?
No,
But yeah, Osborne's wide receiver 2, I think, on that team. I think Demario Douglas will have a pretty good year. He just needs to stay healthy. He had a solid year last year until he got hurt. So
yeah, he did. Oh, absolutely.
Troy Franklin.
Yeah, Troy Franklin. I was kind of hoping the Vikings might have looked at drafting this guy this year. Again, like I've said, I'm a big Vikings fan. I thought they could have got him in the late rounds. I was really shocked that they didn't. Really disappointed. Everything I've seen on this guy uh, is good. He's 6'3", 180 pounds. Um, but he's a rookie receiver. Uh, uh, I think it's all going to depend on who they have at quarterback there. Denver drafted him because they drafted Nix, and I think they drafted Franklin because they wanted Nix to have a comfort level with a receiver there, you know, since they drafted Nix in the first round. So again, he's another one of these guys that I don't think he's going to have an immediate impact. It's all going to depend on how the quarterback situation shakes out in Denver, and I think that his impact, if any, is going to be middle to later in the year. Definitely somebody you can keep on the bench because given the the Broncos' history at wide receiver, at any minute they could lose a receiver.
They could lose Sutton again or
So
Patrick.
um, uh, I had him ranked higher than Mims just for the fact that I think if Bo Nix is the starter, I could definitely see Franklin leapfrogging some of these other guys. And actually, I think they have him as their number 2 on the depth chart. So, uh, you know, behind Sutton and just above Mims. So that's kind of how that shook out.
I think it'll kind of be like Jalen Hurts to Smith type deal right away, where he's throwing to his college receiver over and over again.
I think it all depends on if Nix wins the starting job.
That's true.
You know, I've heard that. You know, who's their backup there? The Jets guy,
Darnell or Wilson.
Yeah, that you know, I've heard. You know, they got Strahan and Wilson. I heard Wilson's been having a decent camp for him, so it's hard to know what Sean Payton's going to do there. So I think it all depends on who shakes out as the quarterback.
That's fair. Darnell Mooney of the Atlanta Falcons.
Listen, Wiggs and I, this is a big debate, and I think we're probably going to have to do a separate video on this guy. We could probably spend a good 15 minutes talking about this right now because Wiggs is convinced that Mooney's going to have a huge year with Kirk Cousins. I'm not so convinced that he is, you know, but you know he's proven him. He had a 1,000-yard season with the Bears. He's been around, and then his rookie year he had 600 yards, over 600 yards with the Bears. Last year he had kind of a down year. Same with the year before that. He only had 31 and 40 receptions. Who knows with Kirk Cousins? I think that he's going to have competition with Rondell Moore. I also think that Kyle Pitts is going to have a bigger role in their offense this year because Kyle Pitts is a freak, and they're going to line him up as receiver and stuff as well. But I'm going to turn this one over to Wiggs because he's probably got more to say than me.
Here's all I got to say. Kirk Cousins threw to how many different guys last year and had a lot of yards behind him. He had JJ, Addison, and Hawkinson. What's he got now in Atlanta? He's got London, Mooney, and Pitts. Like that's enough said right there. Like Mooney's gonna have a good year, and the year he had 1,000 receiving yards, which was with a quarterback in Mitch Trubisky. So I think that's a major upgrade there. I don't even count that 2022 season because the Bears did nothing to help Fields out at all. And Fields was running around with his head cut off like 90% of the time in that season. And then he was the second string receiver to DJ Moore last year, which he didn't have a field Fields out there on the field the entire year. He had a backup quarterback. I don't know. My hot take is Darnell Mooney is easily going to beat out Rondale Moore, and he's going to put up a good 800 to 900 yards here on this team. Drake London will have a good 13 to 14, and Kyle Pitts will have another like 800 to 900.
Yeah, and I disagree, but we can have a separate conversation on that, and we'll see how it shakes out. He's definitely a guy that needs to be on a roster. I will say that. But until I see where he fits into the offense and stuff, he's nothing more to me right now as a bench player.
And here's the thing: Drake London gets hurt. There's your wide receiver.